I could go back, I would have dropped out of middle school, but I guess I got to it in high school as quickly as I could. So my buddy kind of pulls me aside and he's like, by the way, you can't use those words. He's like, you can't say stuff like immortality, like curing aging, like, you know, these sort of things. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, what? It's like, that's the whole point. Why would I not? Like, that's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. Of course I'm going to use these words. I have a very strong bias for action. And if there really is this, you know, this millennium, like they say that that is coming, it sounds like something that we would invent and that we should invent, this 1,000-year period without death, rather than waiting for it to happen.
When you give a child a pet, you also expose them to death, since most pets pass away long before their owners. But what if we could cryopreserve Buddy or Tiger and bring them back from suspended animation once we have a cure for what ended their lives? Kai Micah Mills is the founder of Cryopets, leading efforts to make cryopreservation accessible for pets, with aspirations to extend these technologies to humans. Welcome to LEVITY.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Appreciate having me.
So are you in Salt Lake City or in Texas?
So I was in Salt Lake City for a long time. That's where we were going to do Cryopets originally, actually. But just as of 4 or 5 months ago, we're now in Texas. We relocated the whole team here. I think there's 6 of us. 2 are still moving, getting on the way. But yeah, we're all based here in San Antonio now.
So it's like a trek to Texas.
Yeah, it's I never I don't know. It's a cool place. I never sort of thought about living here more than anywhere else, I guess. But we had sort of some opportunities with the land and so on here that just made it so we had to make the trek. So here we are.
Is it because it's business friendly in some way, or?
No, I mean, and San Antonio is one of the most. I think it's like the 7th or 6th even largest city by population in the U.S. It's quite large, but no, the main reason was because we're building this new facility on the land that was originally going to be the Timeship property, and that's in Comfort, Texas. So it's like an hour northwest of where we're at right now. We kind of got a house as close as you can to that land while still being able to DoorDash things and being in civilization. So we're pretty close to the land, and we have the whole team out in this sort of northern San Antonio area. But just for some context, the Timeship, man, this was, I don't know, 17 years ago or something that they kicked this off. It was a long time ago. This was Bill Falloon and that ecosystem of guys, and they wanted to make essentially like a really, really massive cryonics facility here in the U.S. They wanted to call it Timeship. I think they were planning to raise sort of on the order of hundreds of millions for this project, and they had sort of this whole architectural plan for it, which was quite impressive. Very, very cool looking. But I think it might have just been too large of a scale of project, and I think they bought something around 650 acres of land originally for this out here in Hill Country, Texas, and the goal was to kick that off, but it sort of never got the traction. And anyway, we can get into it more, but now we'll be using this land for storage for Cryopets. So yeah, it all kind of came together, and that's why we made the trek out here.
So they called it Timeship. We had Alex Shavorunkov on the podcast recently, and we talked about a much smaller project called Timeshift. but that's not the same thing. Then Timeship was something a little bit grander.
Yeah, that's correct. That's right. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard of Timeship before. Interesting.
Yeah, there's some stuff
yeah.
on it. If you look it up, you'll see some of the history of some of the drawings of what it was supposed to look like and these sort of things. But it's hard to get any life extension company off the ground, let alone one of that high budget and scope. So yeah.
It was too early.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
I suppose it was.
Kai is a fellow vitalist. Actually, we met when we were formulating the principles of Vitalism, the organization that we are members of, that's trying to influence the world to dedicate more resources towards preserving and prolonging life. Right? Yeah. So, what initially drove you towards an organization like that, with interests like that?
Yeah. When was that? That was 2023. Towards the end of it, I think. Maybe when we went to Rhode Island, something around then. Yeah. Well, so I got interested in the life extension stuff super young. I actually grew up. I grew up in a very religious family, a Mormon family. That's why we were in Utah. It's kind of the capital for Mormons. And when I was, I think maybe around 13. I started asking myself what I believed, and I was very into this stuff. It was a huge aspect of my life. I was like a child missionary. I would sort of I'd bring the Bible and the Book of Mormon to school. I try to teach other kids, that sort of stuff. I was very into it, not just not just following along with it, but I started to ask these questions, and long story short, just didn't get any answers. Just didn't get what I think people at least said that you were supposed to get, or that they had gotten. Any kind of feeling or answer or anything like that. And I was very thorough. I was very thorough with my my investigations, or my journey into that stuff. I and just never got anything, and which it was pretty shocking to me, because as a kid and a huge part of my life was based around that, and now I was kind of left in the the human mortality spot where now it's like, oh shit, right? Like if I'm not getting answers from this, or if this isn't real, then we're really in trouble. Like how does any of this even matter? Why is there meaning to any of this if we're all just going to turn to dust, and there's nothing after, and it all felt quite I felt like there wasn't much meaning there, and it was around that time that I found the 2045 initiative, which was Dmitry Itzkov's project, where Ray Kurzweil and some of these other futurist types were involved in it, and they wanted to make humanity immortal by 2045. That was the goal of this organization, but of course through science instead of through faith, like what I was pitched originally, and it really stuck with me. It was the fact that people were working on this problem in like a more tangible way, like a real way, was very, very attractive to me. And that might have been the summer before high school. I remember going into 9th grade, and I don't know, they send you home with your homework, and I'm looking at my homework, and I'm like, it's like there's people out there working on the death problem. Like, I'm sitting here doing English homework. I mean, this is just such a waste of time, right? And so anyway, I made it 2 weeks into high school and then dropped out. And maybe the timing was good at the time. My parents were going through some stuff through divorce, and I had a lot of time to myself. And I think it took a couple months for anyone to realize that I wasn't actually going to school. Anyway, I just it was Utah, right? So it was kind of the middle of nowhere, and ended up dropping out before it's even legal to drop out, even with even if your parents say it's okay. I think I was a few years before that, and left school, and I knew I wanted to have my own 2045 initiative eventually, whatever that looked like, right? I wanted to be part of this fight, and of course, yeah, many years later led me to being with you there in Rhode Island at the Vitalism event. So
this episode of Levity is brought to you by Vitalism Foundation.
Vitalism Foundation is a non-profit with a revolutionary mission to achieve unlimited lifespans in peak health.
It's a community of action driven by Vitalism, a new moral philosophy whose first tenet is that life and health are good, death is humanity's core problem, and aging its primary agent. They're one of the few groups that truly understand aging as the emergency that it is.
Vitalism's goal is nothing short of monumental: to allocate 1% of global GDP to this project. It's ambitious, but it's exactly what's needed to tackle aging head-on.
As a member of Vitalism, you'll get access to a private community, exclusive content, and invites to special conferences. Plus, you'll receive insider prices on longevity wellness services from Vitalism's mission-aligned partners.
But more than that, you will be supporting a mission that's too important to leave to others to tackle.
So, you should really join us. Follow the link in the description below. For a limited time, you get 30% off forever. Just use the promo code LEVITY at checkout.
Again, that's 30% off forever with the promo code LEVITY. Let's make a difference together.
I guess I immediately think of Bryan Johnson when you talk about your story about the Mormon upbringing and
the other ex-Mormon. Yeah.
But it's also interesting because Sweden is such a secular country. So it's kind of hard to relate almost. But how hard was it for you to abandon that and go in the other direction?
You know, I would say Mormonism or the Latter-day Saints, as they're called, are probably the most transhumanist religion there is. There's a surprising amount of the theology, which is quite which actually shares a lot of the values. In fact, you know, Mormons even believe that really the whole purpose that we're here is sort of training to become gods later, and these sort of things, you know, eternal progression, and there's a lot of aspects of it that probably, you know, had a huge impact on myself, and like you mentioned, Bryan, you know, Bryan Johnson as well. I'm sure there's pieces of it that we kept, and pieces of it that we, you know, that we didn't as much. Of course, I've been pretty public about not being a big fan of his. So I think we have sort of radically different approaches on how to actually accomplish anything here. But in general, yeah, for me it wasn't. You know, I don't know if I ever looked at it as difficult to abandon anything like that. It actually felt like I had found what I was always looking for, right? Maybe it even felt the opposite. Like I felt like that was the answer that I was looking for. Like, oh, this is something that we can achieve. And you know, I also think you know, when it comes to people that are religious, you know, what Mormons as well, you know, when I was part of this, there's a lot of doomers, you know, a lot of people who are like, it's, you know, it's sort of the end times, you know, whether it's you know, there's going to be this second coming, and you know, or there's going to be another flood or something, or you know, something to destroy all the wickedness, and these things are sort of inevitable. It was always my feeling like, well, we should probably, you know, we should not want that to happen, and we should pretty actively work against the end of the world, right? Because it doesn't sound very good for anyone. But also if you know, in the scenario that there is a God, right? Let's say, it seems like people are doing a lot of sitting around and waiting. You know, waiting for a second coming, waiting for these events to happen, waiting for the millennium, you know, this 1,000-year period without death, waiting for, you know, all of these things. Maybe my argument there in this scenario would be that it should probably be less of you know, we're waiting on God to do something, and rather God is probably waiting on them to do something. And I always, this is maybe my big disconnect with religion is I have a very strong bias for action, and if there really is this you know, this millennium, like they say that is coming, it sounds like something that we would invent, and that we should invent, this 1,000-year period without death, rather than waiting for it to happen. So maybe that would be my, you know, my point to more religious people. I you know, a lot of my the first hire we made at Cryopets is a Mormon. Funny enough, he was my Mormon missionary, actually, in Utah. Came to my house quite often, and really great guy, great executor. You know, in the longevity field, we have a lot of we have a lot of deathism in the longevity field, and what I would describe this as is people who are okay with sort of the concept of non-existence, right? Where it's you know, death is, you know, death is okay, or even death is a good thing, right? And that this is something that we shouldn't eliminate. And oftentimes these people are also atheists, right? So there's sort of the people who think maybe death is a good thing because something is going to come after. And these people, while, you know, it's a totally different approach, they are immortalist in a way. They're vitalist in a way, because they can't even comprehend not existing. It's very bizarre to them. They say, of course there's an afterlife, right? Because why the hell would I cease to exist? So there's something that even the religious people have that the deathists do not. It's this fundamental, like, of course we need to exist forever. You know, this needs to be the goal. This is of course what's going to happen. And so I think we have closer allies there than maybe we think. But maybe that would be my note to the more religious people, is that, you know, a lot of these things that they say are going to happen or they want to happen, they should probably be trying to make happen, rather than sitting around waiting for them. Sorry, I got a little, I guess, off topic there from the original.
That's what we do here.
Question.
We always
Sure.
veer off topic. That's perfectly fine.
That's interesting. So you mentioned you had a kind of a window where your parents didn't pay all the attention that normally parents would pay. And in that window, you could kind of drop high school and pursue your own interests. And now you're here.
Yeah, not entirely their fault, you know.
Yeah.
They were going through a kind of a messy divorce, and my father's a flight attendant, so he would be gone for a number of days at a time. So a lot of things going on. I was also pretty tricky. You know, I drive to school with my sister and then just come back and sort of things, right? So there's, you know, there are some for a little there, but yeah, when we finally had the conversation about it, I think I agreed with my dad that I would continue going to church. That was our our deal. And of course, by that time, I had a little Minecraft server that was making more money than he was making, and I think that smoothed over the conversation a little bit. He was like, "All right, I think you have."
Thank God for Sweden, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, just explain. I'm not a video game. Peter is an expert in video games.
Oh, is that right?
I'm not. So
yeah, that's my old career. So I was actually a video game writer and editor for almost 15 years or something like that.
No way. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, so that's crazy. So I've written quite a lot about Minecraft in my days. But what did you want to know, Patrick?
Well, I mean, I'm imagining this. You're in Salt Lake City. You decide at just what, 14 or some 15, or you decide.
Yeah, I think 14.
You don't have time for high school, so you stay home. You're tricky, and you play Minecraft.
Yeah.
And you make money off playing Minecraft. I mean, it's just you're a person who make your own decision very early in life. I mean, I would just do what my parents told me to.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. You know, I will say who I was before and after, you know, they were going through that divorce was night and day, right? It completely changed my personality. I think, you know, I guess it definitely snapped something in me, you know, whatever that was. But I think. It ended up snapping it in a couple of good ways, at least, which is, you know, maybe more good than bad ways. But so I before that I was very, I don't know, super outgoing kid and this sort of stuff. I became more introverted after that. But maybe that's understanding it. I was very introverted. I was completely antisocial. And so I was on the computer a lot, you know, and it was maybe a little therapeutic at the time. My dad and I. After the after the sort of initial part of the divorce and all that, we would just play Minecraft with each other all the time. So we had this huge world, you know, that had all of our creations and all of our builds on it. He was fantastic at it. I mean, he was way better than I was. I was making stupid little what kids do. They make the house out of diamond blocks or something, just ridiculous looking stuff. But he was like a full-on architect, you know, just these gorgeous structures and everything. And this was around the time that the things were coming out in Minecraft where you could make it multiplayer, right? So we made it multiplayer, and we put it up online and invited a few friends, and then that turned into finding places to advertise it and put it up so more people would join, and this was such a great launch pad because it's really where I learned how to code as well. Like, you're like, okay, we have people coming on and they want this feature, they want this to exist, they want to be able to build a house without someone else destroying it. Okay, well, I have to develop in sort of these plots of land so that they have different permissions for, the other people can't destroy their blocks, and so it's really where I kicked off and learned how to code. And you would have these sort of ranks on Minecraft where someone could come and they could donate $20 to the server, and that would get them access to XYZ, whatever, some cosmetic stuff or access to a new location, these sort of things, just very quickly it became quite popular, and we had a ton of people joining, and started to grow the staff team and pay people and all these things, and this was I was still 14 at this point, so it was like a really great launch pad for entrepreneurship. Like, it taught me everything, coding, marketing, managing a community, all these things. So thank God for Sweden, as you said.
Realizing, I guess, that there's this whole digital economy taking shape now. I mean, that is certainly, I think, something that we're going to get back to today, right? So, and you learned, I guess, as you went.
Yeah, just complete. You learn as you go. You make a ton of mistakes, and had to hire people, fire people, and we ended up sort of just scaling it up from there, just making larger Minecraft servers, and I eventually had sort of a whole network of these that were all generating money. So that was the start of entrepreneurship. I what I wanted to do, like I mentioned, was make my own 2045 initiative. Of course, I was broke in the middle of Utah, so I was just kind of doing what I could at the time to jump into entrepreneurship, and that happened to be what was sort of in my reach at the time.
So you're the first Thiel Fellow I personally met. So can you explain what that is, and how do you get to become a Thiel Fellow?
Yeah. So Peter Thiel started the Thiel Fellowship. I don't know the exact year. It might have been around 2010, 2011, maybe something in that area. And the idea was to essentially pay very smart kids to drop out of school, right? And you know, start a business instead. It's sort of this, and of course he was way ahead of the game on this, because I'll say nowadays it's even quite it's quite popular to drop out of college. I would say, especially with COVID and everything. I think this was maybe the final straw here. But I know so many people who are college dropouts now, right? Like this is almost a usual thing, and I think in a lot of ways, unless there's very specific career paths that you're going through, people have kind of realized that college is just a scam, right? Like you end up with a tremendous amount of debt. You don't get any of the jobs that you were promised you were going to get, and so this was kind of one of the original ideas behind the Thiel Fellowship. And I think I applied, I learned about it and applied originally when I was 17, and they didn't get back to me until I was 23. So a long time. I updated my application over the years a couple of times, and yeah, they got back to me when I finally when my application included Cryopets, right? So this was this was sort of when I just had the initial idea for Cryopets. It wasn't a company yet, but just sort of a collection of ideas. This was 2022, and yes, they finally got back to me. You know, jumped on a call with them and went through. I think it might have been 8 interviews or something like that before they told me that I was a Thiel Fellow, like 6 months later or something. You know, so it was pretty. Yeah, it wasn't a walk in the park to get. But they said, you know, they essentially give you $100,000 to work on your idea.
So they're doing 8 interviews. You kind of do the first one and then you qualify for the second one, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's essentially how the and I think this is always changing, and they're doing this in different ways. But that was essentially how it felt. At least it was like kind of working your way up the ladder of it, so you interview with a couple of the past fellows, you interview with a lot of people within that circle, so it was they give you the 100,000, and then of course what I found as well is it's just night and day for things like fundraising, because you know VCs, they sort of see you as kind of pre-vetted to a certain extent, because the Thiel Fellowship is so difficult to get. It's the acceptance rate is, I don't know, 20 times, you know, more harder to get into than Harvard or something. Like it's quite a small acceptance rate. They do about 20 a year, so it was it's very, very impactful for Cryopets for sure, to have that.
So Cryopets was the idea that you were pitching them, and that was your project. But I mean, you were not in college, right?
No,
so you had already dropped out long time ago.
Exactly. You have to
so
either.
Technically, did you have to enroll?
Yeah, exactly. Enroll just to drop out. No, so you have to either drop out or have already dropped out. Right. That's you can already be a dropout. Of course, I was. I don't know how many high school dropouts there were in the Thiel Fellowship, but I was. I think one of the few. Most of them are college dropouts. So if I could go back, I would have dropped out of middle school. But I guess I got to it in high school as quickly as I could. So, you know.
Were people worried and tried to intervene?
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, I probably had a couple of my teachers tell me I was going to be homeless. You know, because of course, like, I think especially back in these days, I mean, dropping out of high school, it's like people saw it as like a death sentence. You know, this is like your life is over kind of thing. Yeah, what are you going to do without your diploma? You know, and I never even got my GED, right? So I just have nothing. I don't have any anything there. But it's funny. One of my over that summer as well, and I owe him some of my some of the spark for entrepreneurship is my uncle. I have an uncle with a beard that goes down to his mid thighs, just a mass. He looks like a wizard, right? He lives up in Idaho. He bought Ethereum at like $3 and was early on a bunch of stuff. Like he bought some like short letter domains really early on, and this guy was just pretty good with a lot of internet stuff. And I remember he had a company, and during that time he would come over and we'd set up our computers back to back on the dining room table, and we would just work on his company, you know, on just his internet company. And I was like, wow, this is awesome, you know, like this is such a it's so much cooler than school, you know. But I think I told him I was dropping out at some point. He was like, no, don't do that. He was like, that's not a good idea. But yeah, luckily, you know, my dad and the people who were sort of really sort of immediately around me, I think the Minecraft stuff helped, and they were actually pretty supportive once I got kicked off of that. But definitely had my fair share of people who also were against it for a while. And of course, I mean, you know, I had so many failures and all kinds of things after that, so you know, it wasn't obvious that I made the right choice for quite a long time, right? That this was going to be sustainable. But it worked out. So,
what were some of those failures? Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, no, I mean there were so many. I had even in the Minecraft world, you know, there were so many Minecraft servers we made that just went absolutely nowhere, right? Like I remember there was, you know, after that server I was running for a little while, you know, kind of died down a little bit. There's always these cycles, and people get excited about things and they leave, and you know, you also have to learn in business that, you know, you have to learn customer retention and churn and why are people leaving and why are they doing this, and sort of all these things that I wasn't aware of and had to learn. But we had one server, for example, that, you know, I think I had like, I don't know, I put so much of my money back into these servers, and it wasn't working for quite a while. We couldn't get that same boost that I had originally when I first dropped out, and I think I had like $1,000 left in my bank account or something, and we went and we bought we paid for a YouTuber to go make a video on the server, right? And I think it was like $1,000, and so it was like pretty much every dollar I had, I was like, let's just, and of course there's hundreds of people pouring into the server and playing, and it was crazy for one day, and then the next day they all left, and you know, so it's just, you know, complete graveyard the next day, and so we had, you know, failures there. I was actually, when I felt like I wanted to have a leg up to the next sort of to do something bigger in entrepreneurship, that's when we made a Minecraft server host. So instead of running individual servers, we were hosting all kinds of servers. You know, people would come to us for the servers, and that was actually the first company I sold. And I had quite a bit of success in the hosting world with game servers and so on. But between those, you know, I had a crypto company that I started in 2018. One of my favorites, I actually got a tattoo of that one. Let's see if it's a little ghost. It's the logo of that company. I guess, yeah, I should have gotten a different logo. There were some companies that went well that maybe I should have gotten a logo of those tattooed on my body forever. But
you jumped the gun a little bit there.
Yeah, exactly, and just, you know, no product market fit. And turns out, you know, a lot of the decentralization stuff no one actually cared about. I mean, just there were dozens, hundreds even of companies and projects that we made in between the ones that did go well that just went nowhere. You know, just so much time, effort, years invested, and for it to not play out. All kinds of side projects, but had enough of the main ones that did go well, you know.
And then you became a Thiel Fellow, and you say it's harder to be accepted there than to actually get accepted into Harvard. So what do you think are your qualities? What are your gifts that made you passed this grueling 8-step journey into becoming a Thiel Fellow?
That's a great question. There were things that I was always, just sort of naturally good at, but I think more than anything was, a lot of people will advocate against isolation, because I think there's plenty of negative side effects that come with isolating yourself for too long and avoiding people. But as a kid, after I dropped out, to when I moved out, which was 18, 19, whatever, I was just in my room making companies, right? So that there was this about 5-year stretch where I really rarely saw the sunlight. This was like I was glued to the computer. I didn't even know anyone in Utah aside from my family. So I spent 99% of that time sort of locked away in the room building these companies, and there's sort of that classic thing where they always say, like, you are who you hang with, right? Like, you are the people you surround yourself are, and I can tell you one thing is when you don't surround yourself with anyone, when there's no one around you, I think you really find out what you want. You find out these qualities about yourself, and you can really double down on them without sort of any peer pressure or whatever you want to call it, especially during those formative years. So my interest in life extension, for example, just got deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, like really solidified as literally my mind was forming, right? And so I will say that amount of isolation, there's certain things that it made me very, very good at. But if there was one, it's just sort of the dedication. Like I at 16, when I was running, one of the largest Minecraft server hosts in the world, I was getting, 4 hours of sleep a night and just running these companies all day long. And just, I was sort of a tremendous amount of sacrifice there to really get, as much experience as I could as quickly as possible. So by the time that I was 18, I was an adult. I had more professional experience than so many people, right? From selling multiple companies by that point, and I think I really took advantage of every minute that I had through those years, and I was willing to do that. There was no like, oh well, I think a lot of people, what they'll end up doing is, let's say they go to college, let's say they get a job, or let's say they go out and hang out with their friends, or they have a girlfriend during those years, and if they want to be more, oftentimes they'll convince themselves that what they were going to do already is the right move because of whatever explanation, right? Maybe they'll say, well, I have to hang out with these friends because I'm networking and this and that, or whatever it is, right? I have to go to college and join this frat because it's an opportunity for this so that'll increase my business expertise in some way. But the truth is, most people they're always just going to do what they were going to do, and then they convince themselves that it was the right thing to do, rather than really digging deep and sacrificing and saying, actually, this is what I would naturally want to do, but I'm not going to do that at all, right? Like I'm actually going to do this entirely other thing. So I think if there was anything during those years that I think it was like a certain level of dedication and willingness to sacrifice that I guess other people my age wouldn't have had, and I do lend a bit of that to isolation, which again, it's frowned upon, I think, by a lot of people, but I'll tell you one thing, like if you want to solve the world's problems, like you really have to get rid of your own problems in a way. You don't want to be worried about rent next month if you're trying to, I don't know, build a cryonics company, for example, right? It's like there's certain world level problems that you won't even have the luxury to think about if you're so worried about your own problems, and people bring problems. You'd be surprised if if you go in your room and you shut the curtains and you shut people out, 99% of problems leave with them. You know, it's like people bring problems, they just do. And most people's lives are jumping from one problem that they created for themselves to the next, or that someone else created for them, and it kind of dictates their entire life, and they end up in a spiral of problems. You know, it's not even something that they're creating for themselves. It's just problem after problem. And so there is something to be said for that. But you know, I did things in a very non-traditional way. So yeah, if dropping out and locking yourself in your room doesn't sound too exciting, then you know, it's no worries, I guess. But it worked for me. So you know.
So among the various paths in the longevity space, you chose cryonics. How come?
Yeah, I remember it was 2022, I think, when I wanted to jump into this space full time. I had my exits in the tech world, and sort of had my network of investors, and felt like I had the experience to really, and mostly the resources, like financially especially, to jump into this space, you know, full time, and take a shot on goal. You know, finally do my own 2045 initiative, right? And I remember I joined the Longevity Biotech Fellowship, which was great. Of course, Nathan was excellent there, and you know, I got to talk to a lot of the aging experts in the aging field, and these, I was sort of very quickly not impressed with the progress, right? I didn't like that we still can't define aging, you know, or agree on a definition. It seemed like there was very little progress. And I remember my first call, I think one of my first calls was with Kevin Parrott, maybe, who was also with us there in Rhode Island at the Vitalism conference, and one of my good buddies Josh, and who actually went to work at Evolution, and you know, we're talking and we're having a good time. There's a number of people in this call. I just wanted to get to know the people in the field and what they're doing. And after the call, my buddy kind of pulls me aside and he's like, "By the way, you can't use those words." He's like, "You can't say stuff like immortality, like curing aging, like, you know, these sort of things." I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "What?" It's like, that's the whole point. Why would I not? Like, that's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. Of course I'm going to use these words. And because when I was sort of originally obsessed with this space, and that's what I was focused on. Of course, I spent years doing other stuff in entrepreneurship, and was maybe only watching from a distance, right? But the 2045 initiative was that stuff. It was the Russians. As you guys know, the Russians in this space are always the more, you know, transhumanist, cosmist kind of types. So my view of it was going from that to now the health span takeover, right? Which I've talked about in length on my X over the years. In fact, that's how I really jumped into the space, was just arguing about health span with people, because I was like, wow, how the field has fallen since I was, you know, really deep in it last. Like, this is just so bizarre. It was like, you know, if you use the word immortality or said living forever, all of a sudden you're not a real scientist. You know, you're sort of shunned from the real scientists who are working on, you know, but not only that, it's that, you know, we shouldn't even want these things, right? It was almost outlawed as a concept. Like, you know, you couldn't even focus on lifespan anymore. It was, you know, we just want to have these years that we already have be healthier. Right, and I think there were multiple things that led to this. I think there were people who were, who truly were, like, you know, vitalists, let's say, who wanted to be immortal, let's say, but they were saying, you know, maybe this strategy will help us achieve more political acceptance or more acceptance within academia and these sort of things. So let's start, you know, pushing this new narrative where we're sort of hiding what we want to work on, or hiding what we actually want. To be more broadly accepted. And then I think it's also is that in combination with the people who are actually like deathists through and through, where they're like, no, we don't want to live forever. We don't want to even increase lifespan, because, you know, this isn't this isn't our goal. We just want to be a little bit healthier. And so I think there's a number of things that led to the rise of this. But I think it very, very quickly destroyed the field in a lot of ways. Very, very quickly. And this is what I've spent a pretty significant amount of time writing about this, because the technologies that will, make us be a bit healthier in our 80s, let's say, are not the same technologies that are going to increase our maximum lifespan. And so these are just night and day. And what we've seen is that the field has gone from Dmitry Itzkov, who I saw when I was originally getting into the field, but also Aubrey de Grey, of course, who was kind of the star of the field back then, and these guys who were actually working on the problem of death, right, and trying to defeat this, to now Bryan Johnson, for example, right, who has certain narratives that are quite maybe more in our side of it, right? But of course, it's just pushing things like supplements and sleep scores and these other things in order to accomplish it. And while health is great, and I want to be healthy, and we should strive to be healthy, and all of these things, it's just a different industry. It has absolutely nothing to do with increasing our maximum lifespan. You are not going to sleep score your way to immortality. It's just not going to work, right? And of course, there's more to discuss there, and there's sort of all these, maybe hopium around AI timelines and these sort of things. But yeah, I think this was at least to me one of the really big shocks coming into the field. Was that not only did the narrative change drastically from when I was kind of deep in it last, but also the focus and the science. There weren't any 2045 initiatives, very, very small ones, things here and there, but it was all biohacking and my sleep score and my biological age, whatever the fuck that means. And it's sort of like you have 50-year-olds who are saying they're biologically 18. It's like, oh, you're 50. I can see. I can tell. And the whole thing became very bizarre to me. So, but a lot of these aspects were sort of in my mind at the time. I was the only one in the entire LBF class who chose to work on cryo instead of aging. So they all kind of ran that direction. I decided to go the opposite one. And, to me, cryo was always the one technology that really targets the problem of death the most. Everyone always says if you get hit by a bus, if you cure aging, you can still get hit by a bus, right? And which is fair, because many causes of death, right? And my personal, let's say we cure aging tomorrow. I'm still going to be worried every day of my life. I'm going to be worried every time I get in a car, certainly, and get on the highway, right? And sort of, to do anything, anytime I'm living or interacting with the world, there's all these ways that you can die, and then that's it, right? So, the only thing that really felt like a direct attack on death was being able to pause biology, so that in the vast majority, especially if we have to have this at scale, we start to get it into hospitals, these sort of things. The vast majority of causes of death, we'd be able to put you in stasis until we can solve whatever that is. So it's part of that, and then maybe lastly, again, it was sort of these timelines of when we're going to cure aging, and I just didn't agree with the optimism on those. I felt like we just were not moving fast enough. I think biology is extremely, extremely difficult. The longevity field might even be a distraction, because the truth could be that we need such a control over human biology that it would actually just be worth the resources to speed up science and speed up this entire process, rather than specifically try to focus on whatever a longevity drug is, which at this point, companies will call themselves aging companies or longevity companies, but they end up making a diabetes drug or something anyway. And so anyway, maybe I'm rambling here, but all of these reasons were why I decided to go into cryo. versus aging originally.
Can I just ask you about immortality? I mean, I wrote a book in Swedish, popular science book, about this field that is called Forever Young, My and Humanity's Dream of Immortality. And of course, immediately people start talking about the heat death of the universe. To me, I've kind of stopped using immortality because I don't feel it's necessary. I can get most of what I want to achieve by saying unlimited lifespan in good health or in optimal health. And because I feel like immortality is just, it's such a triggering word for so many people, and you kind of veer off track. So how do you think
I will say this, when you say unlimited lifespan in optimal health, in good health, what if it's not optimal? Right? So I can tell you one thing. I would absolutely take non-optimal health. I would take some level of suffering, any level of suffering, to be clear. But just saying for argument's sake, whatever that is, for 20 years, for 50 years, for 100 years, so that I can have eternity and exist and be alive, right? And I think maybe one of the problems when we bring good health or optimal health into the picture is that the approaches that we take to getting there, that are focused on to getting there, are only things that would increase health span, right? Rather than maybe only lifespan. Freezing yourself is not going to make you healthier, for example, right? But the goal is to be healthier eventually, right? The goal is to be alive eventually. And so I think it's always dangerous to bring health into these things a little bit, but I think more importantly, it feels like whenever you give an inch to deathism, it takes a mile, right? And the problem is, when you start, it seems like if you give any. It seems like if you add even a touch of that, where you can say, immortality, but, right, then the answer, the end of the equation is always death, right? It's just always death. The heat death of the universe. Okay, then we solve it, right? Then we solve it, or we leave this universe and go to another one, or we, whatever it is, right? And it almost doesn't even matter whether or not that's possible. It's kind of not the point, right? Of course it's the point, but it's not of the statement. Rather, it's that death should just be opposed in all forms. And this is actually, maybe it's part of the reason because the Russians kind of got me into the field more, but this is also why I've kind of liked Cosmism more than any other. Any of the other ideologies, even more than Vitalism. I think there's aspects of Vitalism that are still missing.
Could you explain this ideology?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of aspects to it, and Cosmism was essentially the precursor to transhumanism, which came from Russia, and I think what happened with transhumanism is it was really pushed by maybe the more rationalist community, and I think a lot of the important aspects that I thought were the most important from Cosmism were actually left out of transhumanism. And I would say the number one there that I think is the key, the core point of Cosmism, is resurrection of everyone. This was essentially the part that was left out, maybe because it felt too spiritual, or it had sort of these undertones of religion that the rationalists decided to leave out of the sort of modern transhumanism. But it's sort of this idea that the ultimate goal is for the son to resurrect the father. But sort of what that means on a large scale is the ultimate goal is for us to survive, to get to the end, if you want to call it that. And what I mean by that is sort of gain enough power to go back and bring everyone back to life, to trace every atom back and go and resurrect everyone who has ever lived, right? And it's sort of this complete denial of death, to the point where it's not only are we going to defeat death, we're actually going to go back and take everyone back that death took, right? And again, I can't tell you whether or not that's something that will be possible if we can harness the entire power of the universe and we're essentially gods at that point. I can't tell you whether or not that's feasible. But what I can say is that it should be the goal. It should absolutely be the goal. It should be the very purpose of us is to bring everyone back that death took. It's at least how we should look at death. It should be the aim. So that's one of the all kinds of other things with Cosmism. It's essentially it's a lot of shared values with transhumanism, of course, which came out of it. But it's all about we should defeat death and we should expand into the stars. So a lot of things that I think a lot of us align quite heavily with. But that point, I think, always stuck out to me. Like that should be the goal, because otherwise those people are lost forever, permanently, right? And if there's any chance that we can go undo that, then I think we should make it the purpose of humanity to go do that. So anyway, maybe we've got down a rabbit hole there, I guess, but
Yeah, but it's interesting that you mentioned that we should maybe hide our true intentions, and I think that there could be an argument for actually be careful with the word immortality, because it's so far
my argument is that we shouldn't hide our true intentions.
I know that's
okay.
what's interesting.
Sure. Okay.
Because I kind of lean towards that we might have to do that, because it's so far outside any window that most people look through. But sure.
I would say this: if someone can prove that they can hide their intentions and still make progress towards the actual goal, I would love to see it. Yeah. Because in every example I've seen is that when you change the narrative, everything else follows. The science follows. Essentially everything. You start out as an aging company and you end up making an obesity drug every single time, without fail. You give deathism an inch, it takes a mile, and you are a deathist organization before you even blink. Unfortunately, this has seemed to be the case every single time. I think it is very challenging to build a company while going out and saying, "Hey, we want to be immortal and we want to solve death." I think there's challenges there for sure, because like you said, it's people are, it's an idea that you'll get a lot of negative feedback on. You'll get people that are very angry about it. I mean, you should read the comments on some of my stuff. You should read the comments on some of the ads we're running right now for Cryopets. There's a lot of people who are like, this is against God. This is horrible. Why are you doing this? You guys are devil worshippers. You name it. We get everything, right? But we also get hundreds of people that sign up their pets every day, right?
I mean, it is a very central debate, and it's very important then. So you're saying there's a drift when you start talking about health. I mean, I think generally people are overvaluing health and undervaluing life when you ask them questions about this. I mean, when I asked my class, when I taught this subject matter, how long they wanted to live, then most wanted to die before 90. And the reason was that they might end up in a wheelchair before that. So I usually told them that people who live the whole life in wheelchairs, and it just shows you how it's so acceptable to worry about health, but not worrying about continuing to live.
Yes, it's important that we, the most important thing is to make it clear that death is the problem. Anytime you change death being the problem to anything else, that's when you have this slippery slope that happens. And when you bring health into the equation, you're essentially saying that death isn't the problem, just suffering is the problem, and then everything else follows, right? The truth is that suffering is temporary, death is permanent. The goal, of course, is to be in optimal health. Of course, that's the goal, right? I mean, I don't want to be unhealthy. It doesn't matter. But I will just always take being unhealthy over being dead, right? I will always take suffering over non-existence. And I think sometimes people say these things are just, it's all philosophical and these things don't really matter in the real world. But just what we've seen is that you change the philosophy, you change the messaging, you change the narrative, the science follows. And I'm telling you, there is a reason that Bryan Johnson is the face of longevity right now, is because we have broadened the word longevity to the point where it includes everything from supplements to sleep scores to all of these things, or maybe not just our field, right? These things are all considered part of our field. If you tell someone you work in longevity or even life extension, anti-aging, any of these words, they'll think of the Bryan Johnson-esque approach, which is just health. And that's the danger. It's that our field is no longer even aging science. It's no longer even, it's health. It's the forefront of everything that we're doing is health now. And again, this very, very important stuff, but it is a different field, and it has unfortunately taken over our field.
He's an interesting case, though, because his rhetoric is "don't die,"
Right.
which seems like an immortalist rhetoric, while his methods seem rather health span oriented.
And look, there's a lot of ways you can look at it. You can say he's a grifter. You can say he's not. I don't know the guy personally, but what I can say is that I think there's probably just this strong disagreement on how effective AI is going to be at speeding up biology, speeding up how we solve all of this. I don't think 5 years are going to go by and AI is going to solve biology. There's people that do. There's people that do. I think there are a tremendous amount of roadblocks. I think there's a massive data problem. I think people think that AI is going to sort of magically start inventing and solving things without having the data. I think they think it's going to start magically simulating the human body and simulating biology again without having the data. And it's sort of this. I'm not saying AI is useless or anything, but it's sort of this chicken and egg problem where we want AI to solve all of biology, but it only, at least to an extent, only knows what we know about biology, right? So it's it's almost like we have to make these things happen first. And I think a tremendous amount of this is also, the bottleneck is also hardware and robotics and all these other areas that are going to take a very, very long time to start getting faster and automating. And so I maybe there's just maybe there's a disagreement there, but it does seem to be something that is taking hold of people more, is sort of this, AI is going to solve everything for us in 10 years. And it's funny, the thing that's going to solve everything for us is always 10 years away. We can never catch it, no matter what we do.
Well, when we catch it, we just move on and say that, we have that in the world now. So what's the next thing? But I will say I've argued with you a little bit on this on X about AI. I do agree with you that we shouldn't rely on it. We shouldn't stop building and waiting for AI to solve anything. But I am sure grateful that I wouldn't change this timeline where we have this, where we come this far with artificial intelligence that we have, for a timeline where there was no AI, because I do think that the problem of biology is too complex for humans to solve on their own. I do agree with you that we have a data problem. I do agree with you that people are overestimating the timeline when this might be as powerful as we hope, but I'm still thankful for having these advancements in artificial intelligence.
Sure. No, yeah, sure. And there's a lot of aspects of AI that I do like. I will say it's automated 0% of my life. Unfortunately, I always kind of, a new model comes out and I see if it does something that I want it to do, and it never does it right. I'm like, okay, I'll wait for GPT-6, I guess. I'm always pro progress. I think it's going to have it's going to impact a lot of different things. But I think there is definitely an overestimation of it. And if I had to make one bold prediction, I would say that we're probably in a massive AI bubble. And there's so much money flooding into these AI companies. Probably 99% of them are completely worthless. And I think the valuations of some of these large ones are very, very high, much higher than they should be. I think a lot of this is probably going to start plateauing at some point. But of course, I guess it's one of those things where I'd be quite happy to be proven wrong, because maybe that means a lot more progress all over the board.
So you weren't happy with the progress you saw in the longevity science, and so cryo became the logical option. So how did you learn about that and really get into it and formulate your ideas?
Yeah, I visited Alcor for the first time, I think when I was 17 or 18. I walked around, got the tour. It felt kind of big at the time, maybe because I was younger, or now it seems quite small, when looking at it.
Tell us about Alcor. What is that? I guess Patrick and I know, but maybe for those who haven't heard about it.
Yeah. So it's sort of the one of the OG cryonics organizations, cryonics providers, from maybe it was founded in 1972 or something like that, and it's been around for 50 plus years. I think there's a couple hundred people cryopreserves at Alcor. So it's one of the probably the most notable cryonics organization. It's a nonprofit, and sort of operated in a large way off of donations, and done a lot of research off donations for a number of years. And yeah, at the time it felt quite large, but coming into the field later, when I decided that I wanted to work on cryo, and part of that was because I put together sort of this tech tree to map out the field and saw what people were working on in the aging field and so on, and cryo was just almost empty. It was just almost completely empty. And I remember I wanted to meet everyone, like at least the live players in the cryo space, and it took me like a week, right? So it's like, I was like, cool, I've talked to everyone now that matters. That's
why I want to write a book about cryonics, because there's not a lot of people to talk about.
No, it's you can get a good overview pretty quickly. And of course, there's only one other cryonics startup in the world, which is Tomorrow Bio, other than us, right? So it's a very very small space, so I quickly talked to all the main people in the field, bought every book I could find, which by the way is not many on cryonics, not good ones.
Yeah.
Got the history, watched every video I could find on it, and it became clear to me that it was an area that needed a lot of help, for sure. I think it went through a similar period to some other industries. Maybe even like you can compare it to the space industry a little bit. There were some sort of much higher profile, but failures or tragedies in the space field, which halted progress for quite a while. Early on in cryo, there were attempts at keeping people in stasis, and those people thawed out, and lawsuits and legal things, and the reputation of it was very damaged. So much that people even like to avoid the word cryonics these days. Even nanotech you could compare as in a way where there was these things that really damaged the reputation of it. The gray goo is gonna destroy the world, this giant X risk, and so it became clear to me that it needed a lot of help, but it was also through all of that I also felt like it was the most important thing to work on. But maybe even more important than that is that the the impact you can have in the field of cryo is I think the highest out of anything in the life extension space. You know, as one person, right? Whether you're starting a community or a company or a provider or whatever, you know, it's because it's such a small space, and you know, for example, a few million towards a research project can completely change the game, right? And it doesn't have all of these. You know, it's not drug development. It's not something that's going to take 20 years. There's less of these, you know, really massive unknowns that you'll find in, you know, the longevity field, for example, or the aging space, for example. You know, a lot of the problems we do know, you know, and it's these engineering problems that we just have to solve. So it felt like my impact could be quite high here, especially coming from building fast-paced tech companies. You know, so I wanted to build a for-profit. I wanted to build a company. I wanted to build something in the cryo space where I could get VC backing and really move at a fast pace, not be a nonprofit. I think if you want to accomplish anything, a nonprofit is like usually not the way to go. They have their areas for sure, and we have nonprofits that you know, fill their certain roles. But as far as scaling fast and bringing this to the world, I think you really need a strong for-profit. That was one of the original ideas behind Cryopets, and then the other idea was I didn't want to do what Alcor was doing for 50 years, right? When I talk to everyone, you know, I think a lot of people will say that cryo in a lot of ways is like, you know, if we just had the right marketing, then it would really take off. And unfortunately, I don't think it's that easy. Right. I think you'll find that it makes impact with good marketing, and certainly more people will sign up than have in the past. But there's still something that really keeps people from jumping on it. There's a number of things. Of course, there's always the more religious crowd that is sort of against this stuff, and you'll always find these things. But also a lot of people will call it selfish. You know, to want to cryopreserve yourself, you know, we should leave things for the next generation, and why are we, you know, spending resources to keep these bodies frozen? You know, sort of all these problems. But when, you know, I was looking at my cat who was next to me at the time, who during those years as a teenager where I didn't leave the house for, you know, many years, all I had was my cat. My cat was next to me the whole time, you know, and you know, became very, very fond of this cat. And she's 13 now, 13 and a half. And I was like, yeah, I wonder if anyone else wants an immortal cat, you know, like, is this just me, or is anyone else also crazy? And, you know, we did some initial, you know, market research, and tried to compare how people felt about human cryonics versus pet cryonics, and it was just night and day. You know, people were like, "Oh, I don't even want to do this for myself, but my dog, absolutely. You know, of course, I want to find a way to save my dog from dying." And sort of the statistic was completely flipped. Like, instead of being like a small subset of people that were interested in human cryonics, it was like most people were interested in animal cryonics. But yeah, and the naysayers were kind of this you know, small portion. How many of those people are going to sign up and actually do it is a totally different statistic. But it's yeah, at least the openness to it was so much higher, and that was like, okay, you know, a for-profit plus doing this for pets specifically and only could be the equation that we need to get this as you know, really introduce this to the world. So that was the initial spark into it.
Do we have any idea why people are that way? I mean, I have a dog, so of course it'd be cool to cryopreserve my dog, but that doesn't mean I don't want to cryopreserve humans that I also love and cryopreserve myself. But people, it's just baffling to me. Why do you think it's more okay for people to cryopreserve pets than themselves?
I think one of the number one reasons, and in the field they sort of call this cryocrastination, right?
Yeah.
And it's this concept of, especially in tech and crypto and a lot of my circles, you'll find a lot of people who are like, yeah, I'll cryopreserve myself, I'll freeze myself, but then they never sign up. They never actually pull the trigger on it. And I think one of the main aspects of this is that people just don't want to think about dying. They just they don't want to think about this at all. Whether they're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, everyone's got, I have more years in the future, let me worry about that later, right? And in a lot of ways, their mind won't even let them think about it. So it's the difference with pets is that we're forced to confront their mortality, much, much faster. If you have a dog, especially a large dog, chances are they're a couple of years away from dying, right? You don't have many years with these pets, so we're forced to deal with their mortality, and I think that's part of it. And then also, something like 7 out of 10 people, there's different, statistics on this, but something in that range of people say that it's harder to lose a pet than it is a human. We get very, very attached to these pets who have sort of this unconditional love for us, and a number of other reasons. I think birth rates in general have fallen. People are having pets instead of having kids even these days, especially in the U.S. And there's all these different factors at play, but I think that's probably the main one. We're forced to deal with them dying, but we're not forced to deal with that for us, presumably for a while. So.
The big irony, though, is that you might cryopreserve your pet and then die and not be able to see them live again.
Yeah. And we do get people, and that's how we want people to think. That's kind of the goal, right? Like, we want it to be a gateway drug to human cryo, where they say, oh, well, yeah, maybe I will freeze myself, if I'm doing it for my pet. So that's on a large scale. I'd love to see that happen. It's one of the goals for Cryopets is human cryo. Yeah.
I want to get into the feasibility of actually doing this and reanimating. You're doing this project with a rat. You call it CryoRat, but how do you? Before we get into that, how do you fund preserving a pet? I mean, when you do it for yourself, you do it through life insurance. Term life insurance, I think it's called. How do you do it with a pet?
Yeah. Term life insurance usually honestly isn't too great, because I think it'll cover you until you're 60 or something. Then you have to raise the money yourself. Is, I think you probably end up with quite a few that kind of drop off there. But I think with pets, of course, it's a lot cheaper than humans, right? And of course, like you mentioned, people will oftentimes pay with life insurance, but just talking about the dollar factor of what it actually is, it's about the average is about $200,000 to cryopreserve yourself, whether that's at Alcor or Tomorrow Bio, and then of course you can do head only, which I think is like 80 or to 120,000 or something in that range. For pets, you can get the cost of this. You get the cost of this quite low. You have to use a lot less cryoprotectant, a lot less storage space. The logistics are a lot easier, a lot less legal risk, and also much better quality cases, because oftentimes it's a planned death, right? So the main idea here is, and it'll vary quite a bit, that the cost of, because we have everything on our wait list. I mean, you name it. We have insects, even. We have horses. We have frogs, cats, dogs. Of course, we have everything. Smaller animals will be cheaper than the larger ones. It really comes down to scale. But essentially, people will. They'll be able to finance these things and pay a fairly small monthly cost to cryopreserve their pet, right? It'll be probably in almost all cases, less than they're paying for, their iPhone probably, and sort of be able to pay these things off over time. And we have a few pretty crafty, approaches to allowing people to finance these where it won't feel like a really big cost. Of course, they can also just pay the chunk. This for especially smaller animals might be a couple $1,000s, and then really small animals even much less. So people will spend $20,000 at the end of their dog's life on cancer treatments and these sort of things, right? So it's not even that expensive compared to quite a few things that people are doing with their pets. But the goal, of course, is just to get it, as cheap as possible to where it hits that point where it's just a no-brainer for people, where they say, oh yeah, why not? I'll give that a try over burial or cremation because it's not that expensive, and it's worth the chance of getting that pet back. And I think there is a number there where it does become a no-brainer for people. That would be the goal to get to, and I think that's where we can really get scale.
Speaking of scale, so where are you at this point?
Yeah, so we spent, when we were in Utah, we had the V1 of this facility in my garage, in my townhouse in Utah. So we had to be pretty selective when we opened the garage, especially after we got the surgical table in there and a couple other things. It's a little off-putting to the neighbors, and landlord was never aware, luckily, but that was sort of our V1 where we built a lot of the equipment that we needed, and we started to put these protocols together for cats and dogs specifically.
But I'm sorry, did you actually cryopreserve them in your garage?
No. Yeah, didn't actually cryopreserve any animals. If I did, I also wouldn't tell you because it wouldn't be legal. No, I think it's maybe against the lease. I don't know. But no, we didn't do anything there because actually I think just operating the liquid nitrogen in that space, I think we would have died. It's not ventilated enough. Maybe if we kept the garage door open or something. But again, I think that it leads to a lot of problems. So no, it was purely for testing the earlier parts of the protocol, for building the equipment that we needed, and sort of getting from 0 to 1 there. Now, of course, we have everything moved over here to Texas, and essentially everything that we started on in the garage is now being equipped into ambulances, so we'll perform the entire procedure in the ambulance. We drive to the pet owner wherever they are in the U.S. We complete the procedure on site. We drive them back to the facility in Texas. So,
So how many customers do you have at this point?
Yeah, so we just raised a funding round. We didn't announce it yet, so we'll announce like who's leading the round and all of that stuff at some point. But before that, it was all just word of mouth. My personal X account, and I think we got up to about maybe 1,200 or 1,300 pets on the wait list to be cryopreserved. And now, now that we got the funding round done, we've been kicking off just some very early and sort of experimental advertising for how we want to frame this, what we want to say, and the conversion has been very impressive. So we're bringing hundreds of pets on the wait list every week now, and that's with very little ad spend, like a couple $100 of ad spend. So when we get to the point to where we get the exact messaging that we want, we find the ads that convert the best, and we pour quite a bit of money into it, I think we'll see tens of thousands of pets sign up very, very quickly.
And how many do you actually have preserved?
None preserved yet. Yeah. So it's completely waitlist for now. We are we're getting the first ambulances equipped as we speak, and then it depends when we have the latest with the facility in Texas is that we're actually, it's more for legal reasons even than timing or anything, but we're building sort of a smaller proof of concept building so that we can essentially make sure that it's legal and Texas doesn't kick us out of doing this here. And then we'll expand it to the larger one. But so long as everything goes well there, we'll actually have a building on the land much faster than we originally planned. So that's when we'll start storing pets actually at the land. But prior to that, when we have the ambulance done, which is only a few weeks away for the first ambulance, we can still store those pet bodies at the European Biostasis Foundation, for example. Or even if people prefer, we could store them at Alcor or CI, especially if they're members there, which we'd be happy to do. So it'll be pretty. We're pretty close to doing our first cases, and then probably just not too many months out from actually storing pets on the land here in Texas. So it's all getting quite close now.
So you have you're happy with your protocol and the science at this point?
Yeah, I mean we, as far as I know, we're, as far as I know, we're really the only provider in the world that has protocols specifically for pets, and is developing these specifically for pets. And I don't want to speak for Tomorrow Bio here. I just know Alcor at least, and these others. They essentially have the human procedure, then they change it based on the weight for the pet. Right? That's it. Sort of a one protocol fits all kind of approach. So we'll be the only ones that have these protocols really outfitted and well researched for pets. And there's a lot of species. There's a lot of breeds. We'll expand over time. Right now it'll be dogs and cats, mostly. Rabbits would be fine as well. Pretty much most mammals in that range we'll be able to do immediately, and then we'll expand from there. And then we also just brought on Chana Phaedra as our chief scientific officer, just in the past little bit here. She was at she co-founded Advanced Neurobiosciences with Ashwin DeWolf, who's the guy we're doing the CryoRat project with. Which we can talk about a bit too. But a lot of things are now finally coming together, for sure.
So for the listeners who are not versed in cryopreservation, what happens to the pet? What do you do to the pet?
Yeah, so in the best cases, the ideal cases, it begins right after euthanasia. So this would be a planned event. Now that the definition of euthanasia is killing, right? Is killing, and we like to, whether you want to see it as the pet is temporarily dead and then we would bring them back, or probably the better way to look at it is that dying is a process, and we know this now. I mean, in the past it was always the heart stops, you're dead, right? And then now we can actually restart the heart. So dying isn't as simple as that, and death isn't so much of an event during that time, but rather a process. And so the idea is, but you would start with essentially the euthanasia medication, right? The medication that actually makes them go unconscious, stops the heart, and that's when Cryopets would take over. There may be ways to even do some other ways around that or not around that, but some other approaches in the future where cryopreservation or cryosleep is sort of seen as one of the acceptable forms of euthanasia, and there might even be some seconds or minutes that we can shave off there to get better. Of course, we're never gonna, the pet is never suffering during any of this, right? No matter what, it's always, no matter what, unaware of anything going on. And of course, we only do it with pets who are at the end of their lives. We don't put healthy pets into cryo. They are at a point where there's nothing else that can be done for them, right? That's when we step in. But at that point, we essentially want to cool the body down as quickly as possible. So we put them in an ice bath. We have ice water circulating around them. We have sort of these 3D printed parts that we'll put on the face, and depending on the dog, on the snout, and circulate water in the important parts of the body to quickly cool it down as much as possible. We then do the surgery, which is in a way similar to, at least the beginning of it, sort of similar to open heart surgery, where we open up the chest, at least in the case with most pets. For different species and so on, it'll be a bit different, but and we do essentially a blood washout. We get rid of the blood in the body, we replace it with cryoprotectant. And everyone always says we're freezing pets, and this is always kind of tongue-in-cheek, because we actually put a tremendous amount of effort into not freezing pets, right? The goal is to prevent ice formation. That's really the entire point. So we perfuse them with this cryoprotectant, and what that does is essentially it puts them in a state called vitrification instead of freezing. This sort of turns it into a glassy state. And then following that, we want to continue cooling them down quite quickly for a bit, and then quite slowly after that. This is done in what's called a slow cool down box. Sort of injects liquid nitrogen and slowly cools them down on a curve. Depending on the size of the pet, this can take days, maybe even weeks, quite a bit of time to get them down. This prevents fracturing, mitigates fractures, and among other things. And then finally, when they're down to that final temperature, that liquid nitrogen temperature, that's when we transfer them to those dewars that are sort of what you always see in cryonics, sort of the large canisters, sort of these large containers, which don't look as cool as they do in the movies yet, but hopefully we'll get there eventually. And that's where the pet will stay long term. So those final two steps, the slow cool down and the storage in those containers, are what happen in Texas, for example, at the land. That's where it would happen at the facility. They're stored there long term, and the surgery and the initial parts of it are done in the ambulance. That's what we actually drive to them, so that's more or less the quick overview of the procedure.
The doers, are they like a standard size that you buy, and you can store multiple pets in one doer, or how does that work?
Yeah, so they're not usually a standard size.
Okay.
Because we get them custom made, especially since in Texas, in partnership with Tomorrow Bio, we're going to be storing both pets and humans. So usually what you'll have is you'll have multiple humans in each of these, 4 usually, and you have sort of this middle column in between all of them, and that's where you would put a number of pets. And of course, depending on the size of pets, and these configurations can all be different. We may also keep the pets completely separate from the humans. There's a number of ways to go about the actual storage of it, but probably most importantly, it's these doers are usually custom made in order to get to scale it and to save on cost and all of these things. You usually want to have quite a few of these per doer, and they just don't make doers that large regularly. So Alcor and all these organizations, they all get them custom made. So
who's manufacturing the doers?
I think it's for them. It's the same one we would use. I think they're called CryoFab.
Okay.
I think if I remember correctly, I think it's them. It's good too, because oftentimes in doers you'll have sort of all these bells and whistles that we don't need, right? So you can save on costs if you get rid of a lot of these, quite a bit of the electrical equipment and other pieces of it. For us, it can be pretty bare bones. It's always kind of one of the funny things in cryo is people say, what if the power goes out? What if you trip the power cord and then everything thaws out, right? But of course, in reality, it doesn't require any power to keep these bets in stasis. It's only and entirely liquid nitrogen, which the power could go out and a number of things could happen, and they would be fine for a very long time. We just refill the liquid nitrogen, keep it topped off. That's sort of the maintenance, the upkeep of it. So.
Yeah, so Tomorrow Bio is the European startup you mentioned, and I was going to ask you that this facility in Texas, you're doing this is sort of a partnership with Tomorrow.
Yeah, we the Timeship property there in Comfort, they've reached out to some of the facilities over the years to talk about this idea of building on the land, right? Because the original idea kind of didn't work out, and they still wanted to make good use of it. And so they reached out to us. They reached out to Tomorrow Bio a little while back. Tomorrow Bio is now expanding to the U.S., and so it would make sense to have a storage facility here as well. It's also good because when you have multiple of these facilities, you can have backup agreements between them. So let's say something happens in Texas, then we have the European one over in Switzerland that could take the bodies, and vice versa. And it kind of adds a whole other layer of protecting these people and keeping them in stasis for a very long time, however long that ends up being. So we around the same time, it just Cryopets was finally getting to the point where we had to start storing patients, and they wanted to expand to the U.S. And of course, Emil is also my co-founder at CryoDAO. So it made a ton of sense to partner up there. So that's the goal, is to have both of these organizations storing bodies essentially from day one at this new facility in the U.S. And if other facilities want to store, or providers or anyone also wants to store bodies there, then we would also be very, very open to that, so long as it's being done at a good quality and so on. It would maybe it's a mini Timeship for now, right? But we'll I think we'd like to expand it quite a bit over time. So
we should say that we had Emil Kensiora, who's the CEO of Tomorrow, on the podcast previously, and we've also had Ariel Selesnikov Johnston on the podcast. If people want to know more about cryonics, we can link to those episodes down below. Patrick, I feel like I'm stepping on your schedule here, but could we go into I'm so curious to hear more about CryoRat and Ashwin, and maybe start with the experiment that was done, I think, in the late 1950s or something like that, to set the stage for this.
Yeah. No, and you had a really good article on this, which might also be good to link.
We'll do that.
But yeah, so CryoRat, we found that CryoDAO was one of the first DeSci projects, decentralized science, essentially a clever way to fund science with crypto, right? And honestly, I never even like leading with crypto stuff, because I think crypto it's a mess in so many ways. There's so many scams, and most of the field is a lot of nonsense. But we're kind of using it for good, with decentralized science. We're finding clever ways to bring funding to these fields, especially that just don't get funding, right? So you need to find these crafty ways to do it. And so we started CryoDAO. It raised $3 million initially. CryoDAO has well over $10 million in assets now, and has continued to fund quite a few of these cryo research projects, specifically like moonshot cryo research projects. And when we had the idea for CryoRat, it was such a flagship, such a large project that we actually wanted to do an individual fundraise specifically for that project. we created a lot of excitement around it, a lot of hype, and we raised $1 million within a few hours. And the budget for the project was only like $600K, and it was we just completely blew it out of the park and raised a ton of money. But it's definitely never been done in the cryo space. Like there's never been that much excitement around funding cryo from a huge community. It was about 1,000 people altogether that put money into that project, and so now you have sort of this treasury of $1 million that now all of these individual stakeholders essentially can vote on and make decisions on where this money goes and all of that. The goal here was to take a non-hibernating mammal and bring it back from high sub-zero. So this is maybe anywhere from -2 to -10, and bring it back and show that it can still walk around. Maybe walk around the maze, or it's show that it's still functional and that it can remember things, and so it's a complex project. There's tricky aspects to this. I'm quite confident on us actually pulling it off, but it is the last time that there was even a revival attempt like this was I think it was the 50s. I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I think it might have been the 56 or something, where even they had some limited success with very rudimentary things at the time, right? Like cryoprotectants and these procedures and all of this at the time was a lot of it was almost non-existent. So we've learned a lot since the last attempt. I think it is crazy that there hasn't even been an attempt since then, right? It's just completely wild that a lot of this science, it seems like the last time cool science was being done was the 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and so much of this stuff has died out. And has just there hasn't been any effort in these. We kicked that off. This was kicked off. It might have been 6 months ago or 8 months ago or something like that. It's a 2-year project in total, we've shown some cool progress so far. For example, we put out these pictures of these rat brains that were perfused with the blood-brain barrier modifier that we're using there to essentially allow the cryoprotectant to better perfuse the brain. So you see the kind of before and after. You see the brain that has sort of very very little. There's a blue dye that we're using to show how well it was perfused. So you have the one that's sort of more normal looking, and then the one that's very blue, where it was quite effective in being perfused. And definitely many aspects of this, and a lot of equipment that we've had to get, and sort of a lot of setup on the project. But I think there's something like 16 months left of the project, and we're hoping that by that point we will have there'll certainly be multiple attempts at bringing these rats back as we get further, we're confident in it, and it's one of those projects where, of course, it's when it comes to cryonics, when it comes to what we're doing at Cryopets and Tomorrow Bio, these other things, you want to completely halt biology, right? So because these people are dying from whatever it is they're dying from, or these pets are dying from whatever, and so it's a lot lower temperature that we're going there, and there's certainly other problems that will need to be solved, and these sorts of things. But I think if we bring this rat back from just below the frozen abyss, right? Then I think it's like a springboard project that gets people to it gets scientists to work on this. It gets people excited about the tech in the first place. It gets people to say, oh shit, this is going to be possible, not just this is a theory or something. Because in the field, I mean, there's been a number of milestones and and things that we've done, as far as entire animals that have been brought back, they've been quite small, right? And talking from vitrification, from cryopreservation temperatures, we've brought back C. elegans, right, and proven that their memory survives and things. But of course, C. elegans are very, very small. They're quite small, and even the memory, it's up for argument to how well of a example this is of what a human memory would be compared to one of these worms. We've cryopreserved and recovered entire organs now, which has been a very strong proof of concept. In fact, one of them that we did at CryoDAO recently was the sheep ovaries, where we cryopreserved, rewarmed, and retransplanted sheep ovaries, and we'll even have baby sheep running around from those same sheep that have the previously cryopreserved ovaries in them. And all these proofs of concept, but I think something about an entire non-hibernating mammal, I think it'll make a lot of waves. It will really get people to the point where they say, "Wow, this is possible." And then we just got to go a little bit colder, right? And but I think people will be able to wrap their heads around it a lot more. So.
You mentioned C. elegans there, and I just realized we have another episode with Natasha Vitamore,
right,
who led that project and wrote that article.
Yeah, that's right. We actually we plan to expand on that project. It's one that we're still working through and crafting and haven't announced yet, but we'll essentially try to do a similar thing where we prove that memory survives cryopreservation, but we'll do it on a much larger scale. Maybe even brain slices. All to be seen before long. So, and then there's also, it may also be helpful to discuss HydraDAO, just because it was sort of our other decentralized science project, so the sister organization of CryoDAO, and maybe my only, so far the only thing in the longevity field that has been interesting to me in the aging field, which is replacement. It's the only path that I've seen where I'm like, wow, okay, maybe that has some legs. Like there's enough there where it feels kind of similar to cryo in a way that it feels more like an engineering problem, and there's a lot less unknowns and a lot of parts of it that we've already done, so that's why we launched HydraDAO. Was maybe you can call it hedging my bet on cryo, but more so I think it's just another really, really excellent approach to defeating death. And but anyway, yeah, just figure it's worth mentioning.
Have you placed your focus there on the brain, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, there's, the good thing is, the inspiration behind starting it was Jean Hebert, right? Which he in a lot of ways launched this, pretty much launched the entire category of in this this type of category of replacement, and of course he has I think it's called Front now, which is the government
the ARPA-H
through ARPA-H, which is amazing, and I think we'll see a lot of progress there now. My particular interest was actually in a lot more of the surgical issues of whole body replacement. That was like the part that really stuck out to me the most, and it was at least the most interesting to me. Because and to be fair, we incubated a company called New Brain out of Hydra, which is intended to progressively replace the hippocampus in the Jean Hebert-esque way, right? So it's certainly a focus of ours. It's probably the most important part of the entire field. But with smaller amounts of money, I think we can make a lot of progress on that surgical part as well. And for those who don't know, sort of the idea behind replacement is, maybe we don't have to fully understand aging. We can just swap out old parts for new parts, right? So there's different tiers of that. There's organ transplants that you can do, which I guess Putin was, fond of recently. I think that was recently in the news. Just wait till he hears about the other stuff. Yeah, there's swapping out all of your organs at once, which is interesting. And there's a company or two working on sort of these organ sacs where they grow, like pretty much they knock out a bunch of other genes, and it sort of just creates this almost torso like sac of organs of all the major organs, and you can, in theory, swap out all of your organs at once. And then there's sort of maybe even the next step, which is whole body replacement, which would be either doing a head transplant or a brain transplant into, in an ideal case, a clone of yourself, a younger clone of yourself. Of course, you would knock out the development of the brain of that clone, so you're not murdering your clone. It's just a body, right? So these areas are very interesting to me because I think they're very taboo. It's like if there's one thing that's maybe even shocks people more than cryonics, it's probably head transplants, right? It's like it's a very kind of intense thing. But of course, we've done head transplants on primates with an impressive level of success. And in fact, the thing that made the monkey die after I think 11 days was the fact that the body had rejected the head. Of course, this wouldn't be a problem with if it was a clone of yourself. So there's aspects of these things that we've already done, and that I think we could see a lot of success in if we pushed it further. But just there are things that are very difficult to get funding for, very difficult to work on, outlawed in most places now to even try to work on. In fact, one of the experiments we're doing at Hydra, which is part of a broader head transplant project, is working with these sort of novel fusogens to for essentially, for lack of a better term, gluing the spinal cord back together. And
what did you call it? Novel
fusogens.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, special spinal glue is probably maybe the best way to put it. And we have a video that we put up. This was maybe 5 months ago, where we had fully transected the rat's spinal cord, so complete transection, and glued it back together, right? And 5 days later, the rat was walking around. And had full control over. It wasn't a quadriplegic, right? And so this is one of the parts of the replacement sphere that's sort of unsolved that now we're making pretty tremendous progress on. And there's some next milestones for that project. Next up is actually a way to sort of, again, for lack of a better term, tape the nerves back together. And so we have we kind of joke around because we have like the glue and tape. You have your Elmer's glue and your Scotch tape to do head transplants. But surprisingly, it's been quite effective so far with these experiments. And but again, I think it's just it's a pretty achievable problem. It comes off quite weird to people, so it doesn't get funding. And the idea here would be you make a clone of yourself, you transplant. You essentially put your head on this clone. Maybe in an ideal world you would do your brain, but this is a much more complicated surgery, and we don't know how to do that yet. So you would do your head, and then you would use the Jean Hebert approach of progressively replacing that your brain tissue in pieces to rejuvenate the surrounding tissue, and if we can get all of those steps together, you would probably get a really significant amount of lifespan extension. Yeah.
This clone, let's say you can make this. What's the development time? Is it the same for me? Would it take? Let's say I want to be 25 years. Would it take 25 years to get my clone ready?
Yeah, in theory, this is some of the. So there's some interesting logistical challenges there for sure. It may also be the case, certain things would suggest that it would be good to do the head transplant essentially as early as possible, because it would increase the probability of it healing, and essentially, of course, maybe you have Neuralink, and these things aren't even an issue. But then of course it's kind of the funny concept of you're like Deadpool, and you have the old head on the young body, right? And maybe you need some contraption to hold the head up, and there's sort of all these kind of funny aspects to it. Of course, I would take that again any day over being dead, right? And but I think maybe this doesn't fit into the health span community's ideal future, but also I am part of the group of maybe small group of people that I of course I would love to take a pill or go get a shot every 6 months and be healthy and young and rejuvenated, but my suspicion and my feeling is that it's if we want radical life extension, the approach is going to have to be radical, and that's probably going to look a little Frankenstein for a while. Like maybe that's going to require some large-scale transplants, or it's going to require cryopreserving ourselves, and all of these things don't sound extremely fun, but also I think going and getting a new heart also isn't fun, but people do it every day because they have to do it to survive, and I think these approaches have legs, and we're really going to see them through.
Some people would add reprogramming as also a promising radical avenue.
Yeah. We are coming out with a launch pad right now to create more of these DAOs, more of the DeSci stuff, to have more DAOs in ideally all of these promising areas, right? And try to get more funding for all of them, because so many of these are so early, and we need to see them through. But I just I prefer the more engineering and like more surgical and less 20 years with the FDA and $1 billion to make any progress approaches. They seem a very seems like there's very, very long timelines there.
So we are approaching our 2 hours here, Kai.
Yeah, I guess we are. Time flies.
I'm sure you have a busy day ahead of you. What's up today?
Yeah, no, I mean every day there's always quite a bit. I have Cryopets Inevitable, which is our new launch pad, CryoDAO HydraDAO, the American Biostasis Foundation now, and then a number of other sort of smaller side projects or other things. So it's there's always a lot going on. But today specifically, we're getting some of our new people moved in that just got down to Texas, and we are planning a trip to head to Houston, which is actually where these ambulances are, and we're pulling the trigger on an ambulance. Probably by the end of the week, that we'll start outfitting and equipping with everything we need to. So that's high on the mind. And then it's really been a lot of long nights dealing with doing a lot of automation for Cryopets, because we have so many people signing up for the wait list now that we had to go automate a bunch of emails and forms and things to get these people kind of involved, because manually sending out emails started to kill us to onboard people here, because it's been pretty impressive the amount of people that are signing up. I've even been tweeting out sort of the numbers of what we're getting, and I'll probably continue to do that every week to sort of show the growth, because it's really starting to take off now. New research projects coming through the pipeline for both Cryo and Hydra. Always moving forward on the land. We were just up at the land yesterday. I shared a video of that on my X, and So yeah, lot of moving parts, but try not to die. So.
Do you see graduates or dropouts being attracted to this as a career or avenue or interest? Do you get new scientists and talent attracted to this field?
Not really. I think probably the best example of this would be LBF. Would be what they're doing there. I think that's probably the best source of sort of these young guys that are coming into the field. I don't think any of them are choosing cryo yet, or replacement for that matter. I think it's still a very, very small amount of people that choose to go these routes. So I would call that an unsolved problem. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily seeing like a really strong uptick in that. So something for someone to do.
This is a very sobering
Yeah.
realization when you understand that the people who work on what may be the viable ways of solving humanity's greatest problem, death, are a handful of people.
Yeah, it's kind of depressing. It's it's not. No, it shouldn't be the case. It's very backwards. It's very bizarre. There should be a tremendous amount of money and talent and people, coming together to try to solve these problems. And I think especially in cryo and replacement, these sort of approaches, I think they're a step back from the longevity field. Longevity has some decent momentum now, especially over the past years. I guess again I would highlight that I think a lot of that momentum is probably just in the complete wrong direction, and maybe it doesn't matter anyway because everyone's joining the field to work on their biological age or sleep score or whatever, so it could just be a complete waste. But there does need to be a way to get a lot more young people excited about this stuff. And maybe Cryopets, and we want it to be very young, right? We want kids asking their parents to cryopreserve their dogs. We want YouTubers and Twitch streamers talking about it. We want to go out to our gaming roots and get a lot of these people interested. And so we'll see what we can do there. But I think there's room for an entire really strong project there to get young people into these areas that really matter, and I think that's an unsolved problem.
It's interesting because on the flip side, the DAOs, the CryoDAO, the HydraDAO, they seem to be such large successes for you. That there seems to be this interest and willingness to actually fund these types of projects. So I guess it's surprising to me that you don't see more spillover there.
Yeah, these things they're quite crafty. A lot of people. It's not, we don't present it this way, but a lot of people will buy tokens to speculate on them, right? Yeah. So that's oftentimes you'll get people who are speculating on them and they don't know what the hell is going on. They have, so or maybe they sort of get a grasp, but they're not like super interested in getting involved in these sort of things. So. I think we still have a long way to go there, and they've had a spark, so well of something interesting. I mean, we raised a little over 10 million between all of them, but again, this is like such a small number, right? Like this is like, I think for the fields it's substantial, but that's just sort of a sad thing. I mean, we need to get to the point where we're doing tens of millions of dollars per year. We need hundreds of millions of dollars in assets. We have a long way to go. I don't underestimate the problem we're up against. Like we need just. It feels like since we were at Rhode Island at the first Vitalism event, not nearly enough has happened since then. It feels like as we really need to find ways to do a lot more, or we're probably screwed. So I'm always working on, trying to come out with new projects and new ways to help make that happen.
Aren't there still Minecraft servers around? You can build one and make a Trojan horse there.
Exactly. Yeah. Funny enough, we were looking into buying one recently, just to have someone else run it. But we would, yeah. So yeah, maybe that's we'll make a Minecraft server themed around life extension and start brainwashing the kids, into getting into it.
We can talk to you for a long time, but let's ask you the question we ask everyone on our podcast, and that is if they have some books to recommend.
There really needs to be a strong book on cryo to get people into it. I don't feel like there is one yet. It'd be hard to recommend one there. For replacement, there's Replacing Aging by Jean Hebert, which is the thing that originally got me into replacement, which is maybe a little outdated now, but still gets the whole concept across. So I highly recommend it. But it is quite unfortunate that I don't think I have like a strong recommendation for a book on cryo. It's maybe the most in-depth one is the one about I think it's called Cryostasis Revival, where it goes into all the different ways that revival could be possible from cryopreservation. It's pretty much a textbook almost, rather than.
Is it Robert Freitas?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, which is just a pretty a pretty crazy deep dive into a lot of these things, which is quite
dense.
Yeah, definitely. But very interesting. And if you go to biostasis.com, I think it's biostasis.com. There's a tab that is the scientists' open letter on cryonics. It's basically a bunch of PhDs that signed off on saying, hey, this is real science. It's not bullshit. If you scroll down to the bottom of that page, it has sort of all of the major milestones for cryo over many years. So it's like pretty much all the starter papers to read. Like if you wanted to jump in and see like where's the field come from, what are the major things that have been accomplished, that would be a really great place to start. And yeah, maybe those would be my my main recommendations. And then I always want to briefly shill Cosmism. I think Russian Cosmism, there's a lot there that should make a comeback. So I would, and it seems very unknown. So I would highly recommend looking into that. Yeah.
So is there anything you want to announce or tell the audience?
Yeah, I guess just the big thing would be that Cryopets did just raise a really great funding round, and so we'll announce the investors and everything a little bit later. But yeah, to this point, it was almost completely just bootstrapped. So this is sort of the first strong funding round to really kick things off. So it'll move much faster from here, and so yeah, maybe that's the biggest recent news, but much more to come.
Great. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Loved it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it's so incredibly important to have guys like you doing this work. It's needed, and we have to pursue all avenues, especially those that are underfunded and doesn't get as much attention as they should. So, thank you, Kai.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.